Welcome to the fourth episode in a Legendarium series about medieval living. In this episode, a Barber-Surgeon's work, we will talk about the state of medicine in the Middle Ages and how the profession of Barber-Surgeon came to be. We will then discuss the treatments these medieval surgeons had to offer their patients, some of which could be truly frightening to a modern person. Medieval medicine, like other sciences in the Middle Ages, was based in large part on the writings of the ancient Greeks. Medieval doctors turned to the works of Galen and Hippocrates. Both Galen and Hippocrates taught that all persons had four bodily humors within themselves that corresponded to the four natural elements within the earth. In the human body, earth was represented by blood, air by phlegm, fire by yellow bile, and water by black bile. If a patient came into a doctor's office complaining of illness, the doctors would believe that the patient's humors were out of balance and that balance could be restored with sleep regimens, diets, and exercise. Yet medieval physicians also believed that bloodletting could restore balance by reducing the amount of earth in the patient, which I imagine would be good for their health. Medieval doctors also believed that star movements could affect the human body, as well as the growing of crops and the rhythms of nature. So doctors always carried star charts to help them in their diagnoses. It's easy for modern people to see medieval doctors as nothing but quacks. Yet they were able to treat rashes and other simple skin diseases, they could set broken bones, they could fix sprained ankles, and remove cataracts from the eye with silver needles. Yet they often turned to magic and prayer to cure ailments that they did not understand. So how did the barber-surgeon come to be? They began in the monasteries. According to monastic law at the time, monks had to have their hair tonsured, which meant shaving the tops of their heads. This meant monks had to get a lot of haircuts, so some local men became specialists in hairdressing, with barber guilds forming to provide the monks with this service. And when monasteries became centers of travel, both for pilgrims and for people in trouble with the law seeking sanctuary, these guild barbers were able to branch out and provide the visitors with some basic medical services. At first, the profession of surgeon and physician was basically seen as the same. Yet around the year 1000 AD, the professions of surgeon and physician were separated by royal law. Surgeons worked with the poor, and physicians worked with the wealthy. Let's suppose you wanted to become a surgeon. You would go to the local trade guild, much as you would if you wanted to become a blacksmith or a tailor, and hopefully you could get apprenticed to a barber-surgeon. An apprentice surgeon carried out the worst jobs, the one that his master didn't want to do. This included taking blood and gathering it in cups, putting leeches on patients, pulling teeth, and of course, throwing blood out into the dirt streets. This made the roads where barber-surgeons set up shop smell like a charnel house, and in a tragic irony, also made them centers for infectious diseases. After about 5 or 7 years as an apprentice, they could become a fully practicing barber-surgeon and carry out the more prestigious tasks like stitching up wounds, setting broken bones, and treating rashes. But the most skilled surgeons would take on the most important jobs, such as delivering babies, yet some of these specialty procedures could be truly frightening. For example, trepanning. If somebody suffered a skull fracture, which was pretty common in medieval war, then the barber surgeon would drill or scrape a hole into their skull, both to relieve pressure on the brain, remove fragments of skull that might find their way into the patient's brain, and the barber-surgeon believed relieve the demons who had crawled into their patient's head and caused this horrible illness. Believe it or not, many patients actually survived trepanning and went on to live for years longer. The holes in their skulls were covered by natural skin and hair growth. Another special procedure was the lithotomy, in which the surgeon would remove bladder stones by forcing their fingers or metal instruments into the patient's bottom to manually remove the stones, at the cost of excruciating pain to the patient. And after syphilis made its way to Europe during the 16th century, some barber surgeons discovered an early form of plastic surgery. If patients came in with their noses deformed because of syphilis, then the barber surgeons could remove a flap of skin from their arms and then graft it onto their noses in a primitive form of a skin graft. And while this would make it easier for the patient to go out during the warm months, some patients complained of the skin grafts on their nose turning purple and even falling off during the winter months. And worst of all, the patients who endured these brutal procedures had to do so wide awake with no painkiller except perhaps for some strong drink. That wraps things up for this installment of the Legendarium. I hope you found it informative. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.